The Chairman of the Permanent Parliamentary Committee on Plans and Estimates.
Mr. Speaker, I rise once again to present the views and recommendations of the Permanent Parliamentary Committee on Plans and Estimates on the 2026 National Budget. Mr. Speaker, let me remind the House again that the government has a fundamental duty to allocate funds responsibly and must take heed to consider making necessary changes in certain key government agendas and strategic investments that are not implemented properly to gain maximum benefit. We hear the outcries of the opposition and other stakeholders when budgets after budgets are not implemented transparently in the proper manner. A responsible government must consider the views of all stakeholders, including the Plans and Estimate Committee. This will reflect the government's commitment to transparency and accountability on all our spendings. Mr. Speaker, we have now a record budget in front of us of 30.9 billion kina, despite varying local and global challenges. This House will definitely have diverse opinion on the budget, but it is crucial to harmonize the challenges and perspectives and adopt effective best practices to enhance the lives of our citizens. The committee thoroughly looked into the 2026 budget and came up with the following observations. Mr. Speaker, budget overview. Papua New Guinea's economy is influenced by global events. The global economy is experiencing a period of slow growth and declining inflation, characterized by resilience, but also significant risk like prolonged uncertainty, rising trade tension, and physical vulnerabilities. The U.S. state tariff introduced during the first quarter of 2025 have changed the global economic landscape, forcing policymakers to rethink traditional policy responses. The 2026 national budget is boosted by an aggregate expenditure of 30.9 billion kina, excluding debt repayments, an increase by 2.6 billion kina from the 2025 national budget. The 2026 national budget projects approximately 29.3 billion kina in total revenue, which results in the projected deficit of approximately 1.6 billion kina. The 2026 national budget is based on the theme Security with Growth, which means that Papua New Guinea has made a substantial development progress, which must be continued and expanded. The 2026 national budget is guided by four principal areas: strong economy, connect PNG, going rural, and good governance. Mr. Speaker, issues considered by the committee. The committee has noted and considered the following issues that have influenced the effectiveness and sustainability of the 2026 national budget. One, over-optimistic budget figures. The budget is not a political speech or a campaign brochure. It is like a social contract between the country and its people. When the figures presented to this House consistently exceed the realistic, it puts the social contract at risk. The 2026 national budget is as such a scale that demands rigorous and realistic assumption with transparent evidence to back every projection. The committee is deeply troubled that the 2026 national budget figures appears to be overly optimistic, with the projected figures, both revenue and expenditure, far exceeding the past actual figures and economic realities. This gap risks undermining service delivery, unnecessarily increasing debt and eroding public trust. Mr. Speaker, over-optimistic budget figures carry three immediate risks. First, it can lead to unsustainable borrowing if anticipated revenues fail to appear. Second, it diverts attention from necessary fiscal discipline and prioritization of frontline services across the provinces. And third, it undermines the credibility of the Parliament's oversight role and the ability of government agencies to plan effectively. Mr. Speaker, the committee encourages the government to take appropriate steps in revising the budget-focusing methodologies and assumptions to help restore realism in budget figures and improve accountability to our fiscal process. 2, budget balance and cash flow. The committee observes that the budget expenditure continues to exceed the budget revenue, and this is again the case in the 2026 national budget. With government spending often exceeding revenue, PNG continues to consistently face budget deficit, leading to high borrowing from external financing and increasing the national debt, which is expected to rise to approximately 66 billion kina, or even more in 2027. Through our budget briefing with Treasury Department and the review of the 2026 budget papers, the committee notes with grave concern on the government's ongoing cash flow challenges. The 2026 national budget reveals that the government expects a cash deficit of approximately 1.6 billion kina. Without a clear strategy to reduce the deficit and resolve cash flow issues, the committee is concerned that this would undermine the financial stability, increase borrowing costs, and limit the government's ability to focus on long-term investments in development. Mr. Speaker, the committee urges the government to focus on sustainable and realistic fiscal consolidation by cutting unnecessary spending, reduce spending wastage and leakage, improve revenue collection, and prioritizing value for money and high-impact projects and services. Law and order issues, number 3. The committee notes that the government is proposing to spend about 2.465 billion kina in law and order sector, most notably with a 12% increase in the police department and a 17% increase in the judiciary services to address the declining state of law and order nationwide. However, it is widely acknowledged that significant challenges still persist with increasing crime rates, violence, and tribal conflicts. The 2020 national budget must clearly translate these allocations into tangible on-the-ground outcomes. Failure to do so risk undermining the 2026 national budget's effective implementation, forcing the redirection of vital resources away from health, education, infrastructure, and to address unforeseen emergency responses and security shortfalls. Mr. Speaker, Papua New Guineans deserve a safe, secure, and peaceful environment that supports social well-being and a stable and favorable investment climate to drive sustainable economic growth. For the amendment of IRC Act, the committee is concerned with the recent amendment of IRC legislation that proposes structural change to IRC, an institution that has consistently delivered results, strengthened compliances, and operate with integrity. The IRC is not another government agency. It is a constitutional state organization deliberately designed to be independent from political influences. Its autonomy is the reason why, even in tough economic times, the IRC continues to be effective and efficient in revenue collections. The proposed creation of an oversight board with political appointees risk weakening the IRC's independence, compromising its ability to enforce tax law fairly, and opening the door to affecting decisions that should remain strictly professional. It is not clear on where in IRC's current accountability mechanism have failed and where is the justification of any ineffective policy that warrants such an intervention. Mr. Speaker, the IRC Commissioner has stated clearly that the accountability is welcome. This proposed oversight board lacks sound justification. This push coincides with IRC's audit of major multinational corporations, entities that have never faced scrutiny before. Should we allow external pressure to derail these investigations? Should we compromise our sovereignty and integrity of one of our strong institutions that for reforms that serves unclear interests? Good governance is about protecting strong institutions, not undermining them. The IRC must remain independent, free from external pressure, and sealed from political control. This amendment bill threatens that independence and should be rejected in the best interest of transparency, fairness, and the long-term health of our tax system. Mr. Speaker, the committee has a clear message to the government. Papua New Guinea must not trade institutional integrity for conditional support. We must uphold the independence of the IRC and safeguard the principles of good governance. Dividends payment by KPHL, number 5. The committee noted the governance and financial performance of Kumul Petroleum Holdings Limited and its obligations to the state. KPHL was established to hold state's interests in the PNG LNG and other petroleum venture. It is a strategic entity entrusted with managing billions of kina in resource wealth on behalf of our people. However, the current legislation that created KPHL has inadvertently placed significant limitations on the government's ability to access its rightful shares of revenue. Under the current arrangement, KPHL operates as a trustee, with Prime Minister as the sole trustee. While this structure was intended to safeguard the state's interests, it has created governance challenge and reduced transparency. Dividend flows have been described as opaque, with funds not directly remitted to the national budget and or the sovereign wealth fund. For example, Treasury's report indicated that 7.1 billion was received by KPHL from the PNG LNG project up to mid-2022. Yet, only a fraction has flowed into the consolidated revenue. In 2024, 560.1 million kina in mining and petroleum dividends has been paid to the state. For 2025, the projected mining and petroleum dividends are approximately 1.5 billion kina. In the 2026 national budget, the projected mining and petroleum dividends is approximately 2.95 billion kina. While these figures appear substantial, they fall short of what is possible given the scale of the LNG revenues. Mr. Speaker, the committee notes that under the government's 2025 dividend policy, KPHL is expected to remit 80% of its revenue to the state. This is a positive step, but it requires legislative backing to ensure compliance and consistency. The committee is not questioning the importance of KPHL's role in managing resource projects. We acknowledge the investment in infrastructure such as the Motukea fuel storage facility and its participation in the projects like PNG LNG and Papua LNG. However, we must also recognize that the current governance structure does not reflect best practice. It concentrates our decision-making power, limits parliamentary oversight, and creates a potential conflict of interest. Mr. Speaker, the cascading effect of this arrangement is clear. When dividends are delayed or reduced, the national budget suffers. Provinces and districts are deprived of funds for essential services. Our people in rural areas face deteriorating health facilities, under-resourced schools, and impassable roads. 6. Provincial functional grants. The committee observes that the heart of service delivery and the well-being of our people are directly impacted by the timely release of provincial functional grants and the consequences of their shortfall. When this House passed the national budget in 2024 and 2025, we did also with the expectation that allocations of provincial functional grant be fully honored. We must know that these grants are not merely figures on paper. They are foundation for health services, education, law and order, and infrastructure in all our provinces. However, the reality is deeply concerning. While the Department of Treasury asserted that warrants were issued on time, the actual release of cash fell short of what was appropriated. The 2024 national budget projected 638 million kina for provincial functional grants, but the 2024 final budget outcome report recorded 535 million kina as committed by the government. However, the committee understands that provinces wait months for funds that never arrive when needed. in the 2026 national budget, 770 million kina was allocated for the provincial functional grant. The committee is now unsure if this proposed amount can be fully committed. Mr. Speaker, the consequences have been severe and far-reaching at the cost of cutting other operational and capital expenditures. Provincial administrations left scrambling. Many public servants could not perform their duties effectively. Some could not work at all. Hospitals lacked medicine, schools lacked materials, and roads remain impassable. This lack of funding has had a cascading effect on our communities. In rural areas where basic services have collapsed, our people have been forced to migrate into towns and cities in search of better opportunities. This rural-urban drift is accelerating. Families leave their villages because there is no functional health post, no teachers in classroom, and no roads to market. They arrive in urban centers like Port Moresby and Lae only to find overcrowding schools, shortage of classrooms and teachers, and settlement mushrooming without proper water, sanitation, or housing. Health facilities in cities are overwhelmed. Crime rates rise and unemployment grows. What began as a funding shortfall in rural areas has now become a national crisis of urban congestion and social instability. The delayed and under-release of provincial functional grant has undermined governance at the subnational level and placed unbearable pressure on urban infrastructure. It has forced provinces and districts to rely heavily on PSIP and DSIP funds for core services, funds that were never intended to replace functional grants. Treasury argues that this delay were unavoidable under the Westminster system, which allows the minister to release funds up to, but not necessarily, the full appropriation. Section 6 to 10 of the Appropriation Act were often cited as legal authority for reallocation reallocation to protect essential services. While this may be legally sound, it does not ease the burden of our provinces and cities. Mr. Speaker, the committee acknowledges the effort to clear the outstanding commitment in 2025, aided by improving domestic financing and moving towards a single treasury account. But the question remains, will this same predicament continue next year? Will our provinces again left waiting for funds that exist only on the budget paper or in the budget paper? The committee recommends that the government take the following decisive actions. First, ensure timely cash release for provincial functional grant in 2026. And this commitment must translate into real money in provincial accounts. Secondly, strengthen the cash management and focusing to prevent check floats and delayed payments. Third, prioritize transparency. Provinces and districts must know when funds will arrive so they can plan effectively. And finally, review the fiscal framework to protect subnational funding from being crowded out of wage overrun and debt servicings. National debt. Number 7, the committee notes that the national debt is expected to reach 66.2 billion in 2026, which is approximately a debt to GDP ratio of 45.5%. The 2026 national budget projects that the debt to GDP ratio will be decreasing from 42% in 2027 to 26.5% in 2030, but it is growing much slower than the economy. Debt repayments constitute a significant part of the expenditure in the 2026 national budget. While this shows that the government is looking at the debt recovery efforts, the committee is concerned on the over-optimistic projections that are not clear on the government's focusing methodologies and assumptions. Number 8, greylisting. The committee is aware that Papua New Guinea will be greylisted in February 2026, which is less than 2 months away, for failing to comply with and implement the requirement of the Financial Action Task Force, the Global Money Laundering and Terrorist Financial Watchdog. The committee understands that when Papua New Guinea is greylisted, the consequences will be severe and potentially three main effects. Potentially, there will be three main effects. First, there may be a low tax receipt from slower growth and reducing commodity trade. Second, high debt servicing costs can occur. And third, there may be an increase in recurrent spending on anti-money laundering and countering financing of terrorism, reform, compliance and capacity building in financing regulators and law enforcement. This will potentially lead to foreign companies considering whether to continue or shut down their operations in PNG. Future investment opportunities may be impeded, and there will be a shortage of foreign currency, and banking system and networks will be greatly affected. Number 9, maintenance budget. The committee observes that in 2026 national budget, the committee observed that the 2026 national budget allocated approximately 331 million kina on maintenance, a 41% increase in the 2025 from the 2025 national budget. However, the committee is concerned that the lack of detail on how the maintenance fund is appropriately allocated according to the real on-the-ground priorities and needs, such as maintenance of existing roads, national highways, schools and hospitals in provinces and districts. The committee is of the view that there should be a clear detail on how maintenance funds are being allocated and whether the proposed maintenance fund in the 2026 national budget is sufficient to address the current assets conditions in the long term. Mr. Speaker, acknowledgement on enhanced funding for parliamentary services. During the 2025 national budget, the committee urged the government to enhance funding for parliamentary services, including opposition. The committee is pleased to see significant increase in the national parliament's budget in 2026. This funding will enhance the parliamentary services and support the operations of the parliamentary committees and the opposition. This reflects the government's commitment to transparency and effective governance. We appreciate these commitments. And to conclude, Mr. Speaker, the 2026 budget faces significant challenges from economic diversification and debt management to improving government services, service delivery, and tackling corruption. However, with careful planning and a focus on sustainable development, fiscal responsibility, and improved governance, the 2026 national budget and future national budgets can address these issues and help set PNG on the path towards economic growth, social stability, and improved living standard for its people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You will find there's an attachment here. It's just the analysis that the committee has gone through. It's attached with the speech that I presented. Please have a look at it. If you can go through the budget book, maybe this will help you to get your minds in order. Thank you.